Oh, yeah,
Okay, so you-
78.
You want
Yeah.
to just
Okay.
like
And,
for all of us, anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, my neck hurt, but it was my neck.
I'm using Gloria. I'm using Gloria.
Yes, that's where we somehow entered mix. Yeah, so. I just heard it there.
Mr. Neil.
I see he's doing his IT work, not getting those.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to bother.
No. Your my mom. It's 6 o'clock, sir. You're Sonia George. You ready? No, any other.
Wow.
Well, last past. Okay, zoom on. Okay,
Okay,
ladies and gentlemen, can we get started, please? Thank you. Thank you. Welcome all to the town hall listening session in support of the development of a new zoning code for Harbor Springs. Nice to have you all here. We appreciate your input. My name is Bob Buckner. I live on West Bay down by the beach. And my job tonight is to facilitate listening to your comments, making sure that they get taken down and that they get included and incorporated into whatever zoning plan we ultimately come up with tonight. With me tonight is Bill Mulder. Most of you probably know Bill. He's the chair of the Planning Commission, and Linda Rashwitz, who is going to be taking notes for us tonight. You have anything you'd like to add to that? Okay, great. So I was appointed to the Planning Commission in January. That makes me one of the new kids. And I actually think that's a pretty good thing for me. I also think it's a pretty good thing for Harbor Springs as well, and for the Planning Commission, in that I have no vested interest in the 2024 plan that was repealed in November, nor do I have any vested interest in the current zoning plan that was actually a 2005 plan that is currently in place today. That far preceded my coming to Harbor Springs. So I don't really have a horse in the race on this. I come at this with a blank piece of paper, and we genuinely want to hear the opinions of the community so that when we're putting together a final plan, that nobody can say, well, you didn't consider this particular opinion or this particular opinion. This needs to be all inclusive. I do have a vested interest in one thing, and that is the development of the next zoning code needs to be something that is far more universally accepted by everybody in Harbor Springs. It shouldn't be so divisive like it was just a couple of months ago. We don't want to go through that again. So that's my objective. It's one of the main reasons I wanted to be on the Planning Commission, and I'm grateful to be able to try and help get us across the finish line on this. As I said, my goal tonight is to facilitate your comments. Bill and I don't have any recommendations tonight. We're here to listen to you. So we want you to tell us what your opinions are, what your concerns are, how we can be of help to you, and how we can make sure that the next zoning code is going to be one that everybody is going to be comfortable with. So Bill has a brief presentation, about 10 minutes, and I think it does a pretty good job of addressing the whole issue of why do we need a new zoning code? One of the things that I realized when I first saw this presentation was we've got some serious vulnerabilities in the current zoning code today, the 2005 zoning code that exists today. And when you see some of the vulnerabilities that Bill, and you hear some of the vulnerabilities that Bill will articulate today, I think you're going to be kind of shocked, because it's not something that I think the average person in Harbor Springs is going to feel very comfortable about. So for those of you who are on Zoom, and do we have Zoom participants, Bill? Okay. So for those of you who are on Zoom, please feel free to chime in with questions, raise your hand. I will say that we're still leaving the microphones on, Bill, is that right? Okay, so if you want to shout out something evil, make sure you mute yourself so that we don't hear it. But otherwise, the mics are on, so we're able to listen to any concern or question that you have. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Bill, and Bill can do his brief presentation, and then we're 100% ready to listen to your comments, concerns, questions, and so on.
Thanks, Bob. And because we've done this a number of times now, I am going to really shortcut this, and it's going to take off from the presentation that City Council got last night. And so at the very highest level, here's why to update our zoning code to improve the clarity and usability for everybody who has to use this thing.
We cannot see that on Zoom.
It says I am screen sharing, so let me. What do you see? Just the room?
Simple share.
Just the room.
Did you do your homework, Bill?
I did the puck.
There you go.
Does that help folks on Zoom or
No.
no? Okay,
No.
so let's stop screen.
I'm on Zoom, I can see it. I just had this screen left.
Okay,
So-
I got it now. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So why update the zoning code to improve clarity and usability? To anticipate the future needs of our residents, to try to reduce any kind of bureaucratic processes and costs for residents that make sense, and to sync with the master plan goals and our future land use map. And then there are definitely some areas that can be improved. And so here are the amendments that.
Alleging you beat a man to death with a tire iron. You deserved it. He's banging my ex-wife. A street violation at the man's repercussions.
Somebody needs to go on mute.
Says here there was a witness. Yeah, your man bank. Well, that's a problem. Why? He's the one that's watching us like some perv. Be that.
Hey, Kathy, you gotta go mute.
Got it.
Let me try another puck.
Turn your TV.
Working on technical things for a second, listen.
I'm going to grab Jeff.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
And folks on Zoom, are you still seeing the slide?
I can see it fine.
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Not projecting too well. That's a brand new puck. It's turned up. It's blue.
Sometimes they just don't. Let's try a different one. Just to see. No.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
Stand right there.
I can hang out.
It was in the package, I think, for the city council meeting, and I believe Victor said he's gonna post it on the city website, so I don't have a paper copy. But tonight I don't.
It is on the city website.
Okay, and we can check that before we go. Okay, iPad Home has a hand raised already. Come in, iPad Home.
I didn't mean to have if my hand's raised, it's by mistake. I'm in a listening mode. I apologize. I do want to share my thoughts later, but not now.
Okay, no, it's somebody else. It's iPad Home.
Yeah, Bill, you want to take comments and questions now, is that right? Rather than go through your slide?
Why don't I take you through the first few slides? And then
Okay.
just open it up after that. There's no more
Okay,
slides.
I'll just leave my hand up then.
Cool. And who is this?
JR?
Hey, Jan. Hi. Okay, so that's why to update the zoning code in the macro sense. And here are some of the amendments that have been identified. Bob mentioned some of the aspects that we've identified that bear some study and some analysis. And one of those is permitting only mobile homes in the mobile home park zoning district. And the current code allows regular homes in there, which, what they decide to do with the mobile home park is not part of the zoning code, but it does make folks there nervous to think that regular homes could be allowed there. We also allow rooming houses in the R1C residential district. That could be great, or people may have a different take on where those ought to be, or if they ought to be. We don't prohibit shipping containers as a construction method or for storage. And the rooftop heights in the CBD, there's a bit of a loophole that doesn't limit elevator housings or rooftop stairway access, which could make for a taller building than folks are thinking is appropriate. We're going to look at, do we need more definite architectural standards for downtown? Should we permit more modern business types, such as brew pubs, tasting rooms, and other modern types of businesses that weren't expected in the 2005 zoning code? And then the watershed protection concept, should we include some shoreline protection requirements? Some more are, should we update our lighting standards based on new dark sky standards? Should we allow more flexibility for front porches to come out, uncovered front porches, partway out into the past the setback line? And then there are a bunch of ancient restrictions on guest cottages that are pretty onerous, that only your family and friends may stay. They can only stay for 21 days, and they have to go away for a month before they can come back. And some properties, though, have special privileges where they're allowed to house domestic employees in their guest cottages, but others are not. And they don't have a time limit. And anyway, there's been a whole bunch of other suggestions too in these sessions about other things that we could and should take. So that's that's the approach. Here's the master list of the aspects that people have suggested that we take a look at. And it's all big stuff, you know, the actual number of zoning districts, their definition, their boundaries, and, you know, what their concept is. The approval process for all uses, that's a big one that we'll be completely revisiting. And other things that you think here. And then here's the calendar through April. And this doesn't mean that this job is going to be done in April. It's just as far out as it goes right now. And here we are with the Planning Commission meeting. With the listening session on the 4th. And then Thursday night's the first full Planning Commission meeting where we're really going to dig into the code. And then we've got 2 open houses next week. One's at the Historic Society on Monday, and one's at Holy Family Church on Friday. The open houses are completely non-scripted, just discussion. They're not broadcast, they're not recorded or anything like that. So thought is folks who might not be comfortable coming down to City Hall and sitting in a meeting, as nice a meeting as this is, might prefer to do something else. That's why those are there. Then we've got another planning commission meeting in February on the 20th, then 2 more in March, and then we've got our regular meeting scheduled in April. And that's what it looks like through April. And what was decided at the last planning commission meeting is that we're going to use the framework from ordinance 439, the zoning code that was repealed, and completely scrub that, revisit every aspect of it. And so Thursday night, we're going to start reviewing articles 1, 11, 12, and 13. It's all text and prose, and we're going to go over it and look for punctuation and look for consonants. So anybody who has the endurance, interest, can join us for that. And then on Thursday, the 20th, we're going to take a look at articles 6 and 8, and then we'll schedule the rest: 7, 9, 4, 10, 5, 2, and 3. 2 and 3 are the good ones, the really good ones, and we're saving those for last. So that's the approach, and no decisions have been made at this point, other than it makes sense to do an update. 2, we're going to use the framework of 439, and 3, we're going to do this thoroughly and completely engaged with the public. It's going to be a joint project, and so we're going to do a lot of work together, and this is literally going to take hundreds of person hours from the planning commission and from the public, who cares to attend and participate. So yeah, it's a big deal. And one bit of opinion, I have the mic, and that is we can come up with a great plan that really is going to be, it's going to address a lot of the concerns that were raised last time, and it's going to keep the goodness that was in there. So that's my prediction. And I told City Council my personal goal was to bring them when the time was right, and proposed ordinance that everybody could support and everybody could vote for. So let's see if we can make that happen. So that's it. Set the stage, and Bob, our host, take over.
Thank you. So it's your show now.
Want to do RJ?
Do I want to do what?
RJ?
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
Go to Zoom.
Yeah.
JR was first,
There we go.
also known as iPad Home.
Thank you for the calmness and good communication skills and presenting things, and thanks for support people, Bob. And I logged on at like 1 minute after 6, so I didn't hear. The person that takes notes, notes is present too, is that right?
Yeah.
Watch this.
Ha!
Okay, so I guess the reason I'm asking is I'm going to be emailing my comment to Bill directly. So I've got 3 or 4 comments, questions, and I just listen. I mean, I wouldn't freak out too much in trying to get all the information down, because I will email that on, okay?
Okay, it's Linda Rockwitz. I'm over here. Whatever. Okay, I'll just.
Yep, close your eyes, it's story time. So I'm needing some procedural clarification. I'm pretty confident that you can provide it. I've been quietly observing for quite a while now, and 2, it's probably fair to say that I've done my share of late night reading of the city charter over the last number of decades to understand procedures. But my first real comment and question is, after the repeal passed, telling the city that their residents did not want 439, the PC or Planning Commission got right back on in the seat and began rewriting again. So a question is, who tells the PC to do this? I believe the council directs the PC to begin processes especially something as big as this. Is that right? Okay, so that's one question and comment. The second is, while one can listen online to last night's city council meeting, during the planning commission chair's status update and slide presentation, it was shared that the PC decided that not only would they start over, but that they'd use that framework of 439, which the people just turned down. This, I don't know, this feels oddly like Groundhog Day for some reason, but the question is, why was that decided smack dab in the middle of the public input session process, which we've not completed? So that's a comment question there. And then my third one is it the planning commission's plan or this entity that we're engaging in right now to make policy as you go rather than hold the town halls, gather property owners' input and feedback, collate those residents' input via your note-taking person, then draw conclusions and forge a pathway forward? Last night, the PC chair presented to the city council several slides, which he just showed tonight moments ago, that indicated conclusions were drawn already. The process was steaming along despite public town halls and listening sessions still remaining in process. So I'm struck by steamrolling pace, which is a shared worry listening to the comments, not only last night, but pretty much every listening session. Worry and concern continues to bubble up despite assurances that we can take our time. It really feels like there's ulterior deadline that is not being defined honestly out loud publicly. It's a pattern of hurry up while we're not in a hurry. So, I mean, my big thing is, when we're in a hurry, we make mistakes. People organize, they start 501c3s, they repeal, and planning commissioners feel let down and underappreciated. So that's my third comment and question. Lastly, is this under this title of why revise, which frankly I've been asking for weeks, why are we doing this? And so I'm very happy to see that there's a slide that addresses this. But 2 points: anticipate future needs and align with future land use map. My question is, these 2 points that are made last night and also on your slide today, under why revise, to map out the future land use and to anticipate future needs, feels like code. I mean, it feels like it's curious to me how one does this looking into the future, unless they're like crystal balls or tarot cards at play, I suppose. It feels like the goal is to drive the community towards something like what scared the majority enough to repeal density and development, rather than the pressing, consistent feedback of preserving and protecting. So this future needs and growth land, future land use sounds like putting the cart before the horse, and I might just need it explained to me. I don't know. But the cart before the horse, and those that spoke November 5th were critically concerned about the drive to develop, increase, and densify downtown and any green space, private or public. They're concerned about noise, traffic, artificially accelerated growth, all while speaking of changes in inevitable narrative. Even the redevelopment ready own slogan is, we cut the red tape so you can cut the ribbon. So could we maybe talk about some of these points? And again, I'm gonna pass this on to Bill like in a minute. I can put it in his email. So I want to close my comments and questions by saying some nice things, okay? You know, on another note, thank you for this whole idea of listening and hearing, and for being diligent about taking notes, and for being open to amending the calendar for planning commission events when the people felt hurried. And, you know, thanks for the grown-up tone and trend of civil engagement. More and more people are learning and enjoying being heard. The divisive comments have dwindled, which is promising. Any reinforcement of this healthy way to communicate rather than divisiveness should be done and will always be appreciated by everyone. That's guaranteed. Okay?
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Up to you, Bob.
Okay, we have one more person with their hand raised. We might as well take care of the Zoom first, yeah.
Hi, it's Charles Wilson, 181 West Main Street. Thank you for having the town hall. It's great having all this communication, getting feedback. I hope people are listening. I think it's great that you've discovered some vulnerabilities. It seems like, you know, maybe some of them could have been discovered earlier, but I think it's nice that, you know, they've been identified, and I would say, you know, let's go ahead and incorporate some of those changes into an updated code. It's clear that the old code has been gone through a patchwork and it needs updating. But I guess what I really don't understand is the relationship with the RRC. It seems like I spent some time today looking at that website and looking at best practices. It seems like RRC is really designed for communities that lack capital, that for whatever reason cannot attract capital and need redevelopment. And that is not Harbor Springs. Harbor Springs has an ability to attract capital, and if something, if a building has gotten old and it needs an updating or needs to get torn down, the money is there. It's just never been Harbor Springs' issue. And under best practices for RRC, there are, you know, all of these requirements and restraints that you know, quite frankly, they're frightening. And it just doesn't seem as if, you know, that's the direction that we should be going. The idea that folks from out of town have an absolute right, by right, to go ahead and put, you know, various structures in Harbor Springs is, it's sure not something that I would want to see. And, you know, the idea that a neighbor could, you know, without jumping through many hoops, could go ahead and put a duplex or a triplex next door is, you know, it's not something that, you know, most folks, when they purchased their homes, thought could ever happen. And that kind of thing, you know, it won't happen right away, but it will happen with time, and it will change the character of the town. And so my I guess what I'm trying to say tonight is I would like to see a decoupling of, you know, updating and making the zoning code better, and you know, leaving the RRC out of the picture. So again, thank you for you know, having the town hall, and appreciate everything that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We have one more hand raised on Zoom.
Pat Hemingway.
Good evening. I want to, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Great.
Can you hold up your cat?
Oh, here you go. There you go. There you go. He loves Zoom. So I want to reiterate my appreciation for the listening sessions. Clearly, the last process, there wasn't a process for community input. There was a lot of community input, but it was more chaotic than this. And so appreciate it very much. I'm hopeful that what I heard tonight about the schedule is in fact accurate, which is the calendar goes through April, but that's not the end of the process. Because while these sessions are frequent and there's some flexibility for people to tune in and to express themselves, it's not widely known by many of the people who left in the fall. Most people left in the fall thinking the issue had been resolved through the referendum and there was nothing to be concerned about. So I think the word is getting out, and Zoom is a great option. But I think while you'll get input, it's going to be limited because many people who have left are not aware of the opportunity to provide input. So I'm hopeful that we go past April so that in fact you can get input from people who in fact will be back probably in May or June, and they can also participate. I was disappointed to hear that we're using 439 as the structure. One of the previous people said it feels like Groundhog Day. It does. I would have hoped that we might have started with a fresh, clean piece of paper and gone through what the driving issues are that makes us think we need modification. I listened to the presentation. I'm still not sure, again, what we're trying to achieve, and what the issues are that should be so concerning to all of us. So I have three serious concerns, and they're all related. And the first was mentioned by the previous speaker, which is around the possibility of zoning, which in fact allows duplexes and triplexes in residential areas that they weren't allowed in previously. And I will say this is a not in my neighborhood kind of approach because I live on Glen Drive, which I think all of you will agree is a very quiet single family home or street with a lot of charm. And changing that to a situation where you could have multifamily housing will change the characteristics of that street forever. It will have more traffic, more noise, more congestion, and a lot less charm. And so that is again, it's a personal issue. I care about my neighborhood. I care about my property value. And that's made possible by the provision, which was in the previous zoning 439, which was by right, which allowed someone who might buy the property next to me will by right have the ability to build a duplex, therefore taking away my right to which I have today, which is to influence what goes in next door to me. The way the previous zoning was, my right was taken away and given to someone else. So I'm hopeful that the Planning Council will be sensitive to that. The by right issue, I think, is a serious one and has implications in terms of the people who are property owners today losing rights. And all of that is connected to, again, what's been brought up, which, though, as I understand it, by right is a requirement for the RRC, which is connected to the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, all of which put a big equal sign is outside developers. Those are outside developers coming into our community that will, again, change the characteristics and the charm of our community forever through several avenues. One of those being, once MEDC and RRC are part of the fabric of influencing what our town looks like, which they will, because through that process, much of the approval process is then delegated to administration and taken out of the hands of the planning commission and the city council. That takes it away from the people. So again, I think we're all interested in maintaining the special characteristics of Harbor Springs. All of that relates to home rule. We want to continue to have local people determining what our community looks like, not outside developers. The path we were on before was a straight path to outside developers changing our special community forever. So it's great we're having this listening session. I'm so hopeful that the input will be taken to heart, that in fact we will abandon the path down by right, RRC, MEDC, which in fact will not invite, but will entice outside developers and change our little town forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If I could just, I understand why people are concerned, potentially concerned about the reference to 439, and we're going to adapt the format of 439. I get that, but that does not mean at all that any of the content of 439 is necessarily going to show up in the new zoning ordinance. It's just, Bill has put up here a sample page in the current zoning code. If you have ever spent any time looking at this, and I read both of them, the 439 one and this one, back to back, this is so clumsy. It doesn't flow well. It doesn't make a lot of sense. All we're talking about is adapting the format of 439, the tables, the matrix that says in zoning district X, here's what's permitted. It doesn't say what's permitted. It just says, it just lays it out in a nice graphic way that allows everybody in this room to know, in my district, what can I do? That's all it does. And if you haven't looked at this versus 439, don't worry about what's in 439. Right now, we don't have anything in our zoning code. It's a blank piece of paper. It's a blank piece of paper. All we're talking about is the format of how the various, ultimately, what can be permitted in each zoning district, how that's going to be laid out. That's all it's going to do. And it might be exactly the same as what it is right now. It's just going to be laid out in a more elegant way. So I know that probably makes some people concerned about 439, but you know, for what it's worth, my assurance is that that is not going to happen, that we are going to follow that format in terms of a format only, but the content is going to be based exclusively on what we're hearing from you folks.
We're taking comments.
Yes.
Why don't we just call it zoning template, zoning format, Harbor
Yeah,
Springs
good.
zoning template? Let's get rid of the 439. I think to Pat's point, it is like we're just right back there,
Yeah,
and we're really not doing anything different. And I appreciate it. If we're just filling in blanks, I appreciate a better format that's readable,
totally take your point.
because that is not so readable.
Yeah,
But I would just beg to differ with a reference to 439.
Yeah.
I think it's just confusing,
yeah.
and it's great.
Let me tell you how I think we got there, if you don't mind, Bill. How I think we got there is in the town hall meetings I've held up to this point in time, and in previous town hall meetings that I've watched on Zoom, our audience started referring to the format as 439, and I think we probably just have adopted that, but it doesn't have to be called 439. I mean, it could be, it's a matrix. That's all it is. It's a spreadsheet that says, here are the various zoning districts, here are what the permitted uses are, and if there's a check in the box, it's permitted. If there's a check in the box, but there's a symbol, it's permitted, but by special use permit only. I mean, it's really, really elegant. And it allows, yeah.
That's not a bad idea.
Could do that.
That's what it's gonna be.
That's something to just.
That's, we could probably call it Fred if you want to. Doesn't matter to me. But yeah, I understand your concern and we can call it something else.
This is Bill. I've got another assurance or possible reassurance. The city charter says that the city council can't pass an ordinance that's the same as one that was repealed for a year. And nobody's gonna bring back the exact same one. So planning commission.
Well, there, you're gonna watch this.
Planning commission has a great opportunity that we're actively looking for things to change from the code that we repealed. And we need to make it substantially different than the one that was repealed. So.
Not just shuffled around.
Not,
That's right.
not just what?
Shuffled around.
Not shuffle around, no, it's for things to change, so, it's not a trick. Come along for the ride and be part of the problem.
Been here for the ride. I've been here, I have more comments, I don't know if we want.
Yeah, no, please go ahead.
Or what we want to do, but I strongly agree with what Pat was saying about the RRC. I've asked it so many times, I think many people in this community have asked it. I still feel like we don't have an honest, straightforward answer. Is RRC in the works? Is it a goal? Are we trying to get there? And will we become a redevelopment ready community? Because I absolutely don't want any part of it,
Right.
part of the MDC. And so I think just for transparency and, you know, I'm trying to get along on the same, you know, page. If that could just be asked and answered, call the question, whether it's planning commission, the city council, both, call the question. I'd like to see it put to a vote. I would like to see it on the record, and I would like to know that it's gone, it's done. It will not be a part of our future going forward.
And for clarification, that is a city council issue. Planning commission has not been working to propose something to satisfy the RRC. We're working to propose something that's good for the community. So believe it or not, that hasn't been our goal.
I can say,
So I don't need to defend it anymore.
yeah,
Or explain it, because frankly, I would love it if this cloud wasn't over the work that we're trying to do for the community here.
So how do we get that answered then? Because no, it's just been addressed and asked so many times. And yet as we sit here today, there's a RRC, you know, committee. I've yet to find their minutes. I don't know where those are on the website, but I've yet to find a single minute from those meetings. I know there are 5 city employees that sit on that committee. I know there are people that don't even live in town that sit on it. In fact, the majority. So there's just, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, you know, it's probably a duck. I think that's what I'm feeling, and I'm sure I'm not the only one from what I've talked to, you know, with people in town. So I don't know how that gets answered. I'll be happy to do it if there's a way to do it. Do you go to city council and question, or do you, what do you do? Because I think so many things that stem from that RRC are what we don't want. The buy right is #1 on my list. So I guess I would just like that on the page and asked and answered somehow, and I don't know how to do it. Again,
You missed a really great open house where RRC was kind of the main topic. And one of the things we wanted to point out is there are things we are doing here in the planning commission that are just basic common sense, like this restructuring that we did to make it easier to find information, streamline the process. You know, doing things like, you know, most of the zoning board of appeals are for front porch additions beyond the setback. So let's put that, fix that in the code, so those people don't have to go through that extra expense, extra process, you know.
I think they should. I don't want that by right. I
No,
would
no,
like
no, no.
people to have to.
Right,
to the
they
zoning
still
board.
have to come.
Right.
But if
oh boy.
if as a community, we agree that in a certain particular area, it doesn't make sense to have a 20-foot setback, then a 10-foot setback is okay. which
Provide
would
Johnson
be
did not say what the
Oh.
president Trump can shut down USAID without.
then, those type of things make sense to reduce the onerous process. Or
I
like the
wasn't at that meeting, but I'm at this meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Or like
let's just go.
restructuring of the format.
I know, so can the people online go on mute?
Hey Frank, can you go on mute? Sounds like your TV's on.
There we go.
Okay, so things like,
I'm sorry, I don't know who you are.
I'm sorry, I'm reading words.
You can mute them.
Can you mute them, Bill?
If you go over their name and then you-
Thank you.
Thing. Okay, so I actually live just outside of this city area, but I'm involved in a lot of planning in the broader area. Okay, and so I've been attending these meetings. One, because I have a historic preservation agenda that I would like to see the city adopt. Okay, but I'm also here listening to what the city residents are saying. Because we're gonna be participating with townships around here. And typically, a lot of things that the city does gets adopted out. It's like the whole auxiliary dwelling unit.
Can you tell me what organization you're with? I'm with a particular organization?
No, when I attend these meetings, I'm here for me because I'm a historic preservation person. And I hate seeing all these beautiful homes being torn down to build bigger, better. Okay.
Well, we've got plenty to talk about.
Right. But what I was gonna say is that, the whole restructuring of the code into this more easily, usable process, okay? It was done for common sense. It happens to fit one of the criteria for the RRC, but it wasn't done because of the RRC. It just made common sense to restructure and put everything together. Okay, so keep that in mind when you talk about the RRC. I know there's tons of
We would
other.
just like it gone. That's really a lot. Just like it gone. And then we wouldn't have to be having this conversation.
Yeah, but like I
we've
said,
been doing this for.
the city council, not the planning.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I don't know your name, ma'am, in the white sweater. Ma'am, your name is, I'm sorry.
Gretchen.
Gretchen, yeah, I'm Tiff. I just want to go back to Gretchen's point of when are we gonna get somebody to put actual an agenda item to the city council to vote up and down in the RRC or not?
Right.
And period.
I've asked,
Period.
We've
We've asked
put it in
this
writing.
for months.
I have
You've asked it.
submitted
You're
an
not
email
alone,
to the
Gretchen.
city council, to the mayor.
And I so
It
appreciate
just
all
never
these
gets-
ideas, but
never
that's the
gets
question that never gets resolved.
And I think
It's-
if that could get resolved, so many of these other things would fall into place. So, I'm happy to participate. I'm happy to be, knowledgeable on what's going on, but I feel like it is groundhog. I feel like we keep talking about the same things over and over. And you reach a point where, you're gonna lose that enthusiasm and the input from people because they're just like, okay, it's the same old, so what can I do?
It's been 5 years. I
Yeah.
just feel like if this was gonna help us, like it's helped Sheboygan, Charlottesville, Petoskey, shoot, every town within, 100 miles. It's just not gonna help us. That's my opinion. And if it was, we would know it by now and we could just move on. We have things to do here, so. And this isn't one of them. I didn't realize.
I recommend you come to a city council meeting. Because, and have you made that?
So-
I put it in writing to the council, I have. Yep.
We got 15 minutes.
yeah. But real quickly, to Bill's point, that is beyond our purview. That's not what the planning commission is responsible for. I will say this, for what it's worth. In multiple conversations I've had with Bill and other members of the planning commission since I've been on board, never heard anyone once say we have to do this for RRC. Never once.
But yet they don't disengage.
That's right.
Well, that's the city council.
Well, we're all one, we're one big happy family, so maybe we could figure out how the planning commission could get a recommendation, if desired, to the city council to disengage. You surely have that power. I mean, that's just a suggestion. At some point, it's got to get out of the black hole of public comments.
Sir, you had a question here.
Well, comment if you guys are open. So, here in Appleton, West Traverse Township,
7 comments, maybe 7 concerns, 1 comment. One, key to our town, I think, is building height in our CBD. So 38 feet sounds great to me, 52 is way too high. It's a concern for a lot of people. It's gonna be a wall of condos, and the more you can squeeze 2 condo units above a retail or 3, it's gonna happen. So that's a big concern. If you want that, Bay Harbor might be the place for you, but it's gonna destroy Harbor. For those of us who've been here for a long time, half a century or more, that's the charm of the old town. And the more you incentivize higher, bigger condo units, they're gonna tear down those old buildings. And then we're just gonna be like Bay Harbor, which is nice, but I don't wanna live in a new town. I'm living here. That's 1. 2, community input, the buy right, the RRC, definitely echo that. We just need to get this. It's so true. If you could just get that off the table, it would, and MEDC, people would be so much happier and they'd feel so much more comfortable that it's not an agenda item. We're not there yet, and it just needs to formally be there, as you said. Historic preservation, because I obviously share that. I wouldn't mind seeing something in the code that has something that, at least from an architectural design, considers architecturally consistent building. Something modern in our downtown, it's probably not the right place for it. So if we have some sort of guideline, I think that would be appropriate. Setbacks, I'm really not in favor of the Birmingham, let's reduce the front and side yard setbacks. It just creates Bigfoot homes, it's not attractive. It's not a good use of our resources, so definitely concerned about that. Definitely concerned about flag lots, but I haven't heard any talk about that, so I'm assuming you're not considering that. But it's definitely not something I think the majority of the city and the communities want. For those of you who don't know what a flag lot is, it's a long driveway with a house in the back, so it kind of looks like a flag. Not a good idea, but it spurs development because you can maximize the use of land. And then duplexes and triplexes, I echo the lady on Glen Drive. It's just not gonna help us. I mean, it's not gonna be low-cost housing, they'll be expensive, and it takes away from the character. So those are my concerns. As far as one that I don't mind that wasn't 439, I don't have a problem with ADUs or guest houses. I think that can be beneficial if done correctly. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think if people really look at how you approach it, that can be a good thing. And I'm not for limiting like 21 days. If you have a guest house and you have an overflow or you're renting it, if it's appropriate for that lot, I think that can serve the community. I'm not against an ADU. I think that can be beneficial. It's great. Very good comments. Thank you. Thanks. We appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Nate came special tonight because he made some comments last night
Yeah,
at city council. Nate, can you, or would you care to revisit some of that?
sure.
I've lived here my whole life. I've never seen so much animosity or people coming to City Hall. Unfortunately, this has been dragging on so long into the wee hours of winter that really the only one's here because there's only a handful of people who are still paying attention. I don't know how many people are online, but I'm guessing quite a few. And it's shocking how much, to everybody's dismay, the RRC continues to be bantered. So I appreciate everybody talking on this, however we talk about it, wherever it fits. It hasn't been put down, even though it is rabid in I think 90+% of people's opinions. I have not seen anybody really get excited about the RRC, less the 5 people we can't find any information or notes on that are going to continue to be on this by tax dollars for several years now. And that's a huge dismay. I love the transparency, albeit we have 9 minutes here, and we've been to several of these meetings and several additional meetings. I don't personally care if this takes another 2 or 10 years to get done. The city is not failing unless we are divided, in which case we will see tar and feather things happen like we did early this year. Whether it was in November or October or it was all the way through. And that's my biggest dismay. Being that I'll still definitely be here dealing with this for 50 years in the same room. I have a very long biased opinion that Harbor Springs is the greatest little community in the whole world. And that it doesn't take a big government to get this. And then we go on last night from talking about how we need these things, and then we go to talking about how we need to raise money. And we realize that we've pissed off 80% of the people paying taxes in this city and can't figure out how we're gonna raise money for things like boardwalk, or this little thing, or the fountain behind Main Street, or several other projects that have been completely bastardized. The boardwalk has been a part of my life, the whole life, and whether we actually need the second half of it versus want it, I think people should have the ability with their tax dollars to say, yes, we do want this, and not have it pushed back on everybody else. I think that could have been funded really easy. In fact, I'm pretty sure several people wrote checks on it, and we pissed in the Cheerios, and then here we are with it still unfinished several years later. We're gonna see this continue to get a lot hotter should we not continue to put brakes on this. I think this summer's gonna really suck in these meetings if we rush this. And albeit, I wish everybody was here in this meeting tonight and for every meeting for the next 6 weeks. A lot of other people are doing a lot of other things. And the 3 kids I have, the aging this and business and church and several other meetings and business and this is taking hundreds of people's hours. I'm grateful to see everybody in this room have a conversation. What we will actually get from these notes versus moving forward versus putting an agenda item about being direct about the RRC, I think would be a really helpful step in the right direction. I'm on the Historical Society. I'm terribly biased towards the 18 oldest buildings in town, and I'm intimately familiar with all of them. I will be so sad when I see Turkey's torn down and having some big 3 or 4 story condo put on top of it, because it is not worth it to keep it as a building. That sucks.
I don't want to limit it to just 18 buildings. I want all the historic buildings preserved.
I would love to see that too.
Yeah,
Terribly biased.
I'm trying to rescue 5 Beach Street right now.
Okay, and albeit, I'd love to be able to say that we can keep all the old things. If you still own property, you should have some rights with your property. And by right, I think it's a terrible idea. It's gonna screw everything. Birminghaming it up with lot lines is a terrible idea. And, I think we only had 2 or 3 meetings about getting porches pushed out last year. That's not that many meetings. We've been dealing with, I'm a realtor by trade, so I'm dealing with all sorts of these setbacks, side yards, zoning code. I've been dealing with zoning code for 12 years. It's a pain in the ass because it's not straightforward. It was built in the previous time, and I do think that there are some problems in it that leave us suited for some or bigger developers to come in and bulldoze some things and steamroll things in board. So I would like to fix this. I believe in progress. I believe we can do better. I believe that the biggest first thing we need to do is get the community back together instead of having so much division. That all of this should be set to the side. Let's have some sort of a get together where we can actually have more than an hour. Maybe little things, team building. Maybe this goes on through the so ice cream. I love ice cream. I'm happy to provide liquor and drive everybody home. I mean, like, let's actually have a coming together Jesus moment versus a tar and feather moment, which I'm afraid is only building. I would love to see any form of community building, and I don't care if this takes 10 years to rewrite. What's the hurry at this point? Outside of we need community first, and then everything else will build from that. This foundation is cracked right now. I love communication, being able to be here tonight where we can talk, where we're not limited to 3 minutes, where we actually have feedback back and forth, because I think 3 minutes is really neutered some people's opinions of where their time and conversation is taken, and that is really stepping on ourselves.
I want to see historic preservation added in because right now it is not.
No, but there is such a big amount of people that have loved Harbor, not just for 5 years or 10 years, not just for 1 or 2 or 3 or.
So why are we going to see Weckwe tearing down little cottages in favor of building a big, huge one?
Weekly has been here since before really Harbor Springs was.
Well, this is in the city limits.
Right, but Weekly was here before the city of Harbor. I mean, it was a real.
And it's not just a Weekly. We lost one at Forest Beach this past fall.
Sure.
I live across from Cook Point.
Sure.
And I've seen 2 or 3 cottages get torn down and these huge mansions built.
We're gonna see that a
And
lot more
I've
down.
been trying to rescue every single one of them. There's always something that stands in the way. Like Cook Point Drive is a 1-lane dirt road, you cannot get a house there.
Well, and that's a real limiting factor.
Well, another
That's really
limiting
familiar.
factor is the city of Harvard Springs is the only city that will not allow electric lines to be brought down for a house to move through. It will not disrupt the power service.
They did it for a garage not long ago.
Alright,
They did it for a garage not long ago.
well, right now, the building mover is telling me that he can't bring a building through Harbor Springs. They
Right
have
through
lines
downtown.
out.
Can I actually
Yeah, go
add something? Okay, as someone who worked in government prior to, I was the director for the Office of Local Government in the state of New Jersey for the Department of Environmental Protection. The RRC is something that is very similar to what we had there, and it is not for this type of environment. I mean, you guys can afford to purchase your own things and do your own things. You don't need to lock up your municipality and be beholden to the state government. So I really hope, and I was horrified to hear that there's actually a committee that meets for RRC. I would really like to know when this committee meets, who this committee people are, and how we can disband this group as soon as possible, because everybody in this town seems to not like, I mean, the majority. I mean, I think that's the riding factor of the mandate during the election is the RRC. The other thing, I echo every single thing that you've already put on this. And I am not someone who has lived here for decades, but I moved here specifically for this small town. I am retiring to this community because this is the community I want to live in. I don't want it to be I've seen this. I've lived all over the country. I've seen where a community's gone from no lights to all of a sudden crazy traffic, because no one, when you talk about affordable housing and all that other, yes, they don't do it with the eye to the schools, the fire, the electric, all of that stuff. They do that stuff after it's become a problem. And if you want something like that, move to Traverse City. Petoskey is doing one heck of a job of filling every piece of green land for additional housing. So, and as far as your processes, I think, like I've echoed with everybody else, it's great that you have these and you've done a wonderful job of, putting this all together. But what I see, and I had the same feeling about using the same 439 template or whatever, is, okay, if we're going to use that as a template, obviously there's been a lot of people that say, I don't like this and I don't like that. Can we get a big black Sharpie and just X that out and not have to see that rewritten in some other repackaging somewhere else in this format? I mean, I really would like to see it. Yeah, let's just take this. And I can't attend all of your meetings. And I think it's wonderful how you're breaking them up. In May and June, end of May, like sometime in June, can we repackage what has been done in all of those meetings to say, this is what we've done as a recap. And then this is what we ended up with based on all the community input. So May and June, and then we have some other people that will be coming in at that time, and they can say, wow, this is some really great work. I have a couple of other ideas, and we all go, wow, I never thought of that one. That's really good. Let's kind of add that to the mix. So we have some more input. I've done these things all, and when you're meetings with this 3-minute, what's really nice is if you have a little stack of cards, hey, you have some more, you want to talk about this further, come meet me at town hall or at my office. We'll discuss it. I used to do that consistently. You can't answer everyone's question. There's some pretty heated things. The more heated someone was, the quicker I caught them later to give them my card to say, hey, listen, I'd like to talk to you further. You seem pretty disturbed about this. I'd like to help you out with the understanding. You're a small town with not that many people. And as far as I mentioned it earlier, I was reading in the newspaper, did not see this meeting. And apparently we're not putting these meetings. Why don't we add that? Why don't we put it in the newspaper that this meeting was happening tonight for future? Obviously we didn't do it for this one, but for future. And that's one more way to capture. That's the other thing that 75 programs, they always didn't get it right. I would say touch them all different ways, whether it's an email, a postcard, something in the newspaper. You've got to touch them more than 3 or 4 different ways in order to capture the most amount of people. it seems like, you know, you shouldn't have to, but you know what? If you don't want what happened in November to happen again, that's the way to do it. You capture them in, you know, a couple of different ways. So that's just my two cents.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's,
Sorry, one last comment.
Yeah.
I think people are finally, as of like last couple of weeks, coming to have better conversation. Like, I'm grateful for this. I think that
We
no,
have the yes and no teams coming closer together too.
and it's not just yes and no, it's resorter versus county, it's outside, it's local, it's all these different things. But being able to have these conversations, I mean, we divide that again, because it keeps getting more divided. But I don't think that anybody cares how hard anybody's worked or how long on this. I think that people care about the outcome. So if this does take 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years, I think that nobody cares. I think that it's a lot more about finishing something right than it is about continuing to hurry things up. And no matter what time period we're on, if we don't have the buy-in, which this is supposed to be, you know, on taxpayer dollar, for taxpayer things, and yet here we are the ones trying to help make this work. I mean, I look forward to when this is over. Here's moving forward together. I hope that we don't smell it being big, so we'll still get to live here together.
okay. Any other comments or questions?
Has anybody ever just put together that the IRC is just a tool that doesn't?
Oh, John, have we ever? And, yeah, everybody, but, yep.
Because I sat on,
They
I
don't
mean,
like the two.
I sat on that board, I've sat on the board for, I don't know what, 4 years?
City council.
Yeah. When it was developed, it was a tool to help bring Harvard up to certain standards, let's say, because we were working on getting the master plan started, and COVID hit, and then everything went sideways, as everybody knows. Then it came back around. And then when we were looking, when I sat on the board, we were looking at ways to raise money, because budget is tough, different things like that. Well, certain people, naming names, came to us as board members saying, there's all this free money, there's all this stuff. You can apply for this, you can apply for that, you can apply for this. Well, the city of Harbor Springs isn't eligible for 90% of that stuff up there because of its demographics, because of what goes on around here. By complying with certain things of the IRC, not tying us to Lansing, not tying us to anything. It's like the DNR grants. If we apply for a DNR grant, we get tied in to Lansing, and then Cold Springs. We don't want Lansing or the DNR tied to anything that we do in the marina, things here. Most of us that have grown up here or dealt with politics around here know that. The IRC allows the city, in compliance with certain things, to be eligible to get funds. That's really all it's doing. It helps us build green spaces. It helps us organize some different things. It does not tie us to Lansing in any way, shape, or form.
You just said the DNR came strings.
With the DNR, but that's only if you apply and you accept the grant,
Which is
right?
what we have.
No, we've turned a lot of them down. Anything that, well, at least when I sat on the board, any things that got applied for and they came back accepted, if there were strings attached that didn't meet what the city wanted to do, they were turned down. That's why when the marina, you take the marina, for example, they've been awarded a couple different times to do projects down there, but the DNR had strings attached. They turned them down. Because once the DNR gets involved within our harbor down here, you think you have control? You've none. They come in, they will do what they want down here.
What makes you think RRC doesn't do this? What makes you think RRC does not do this?
We're not tied to anything right now. All we're doing is using it as a guideline to make things better.
Yeah, but see, that's the problem.
Yeah.
And this is where you're gonna get so much pushback, because I know those days, I went to those meetings when you were there. The RRC sets out guidelines that you have to follow. We don't need them to tell us what the guidelines are, and we don't need their money for redevelopment. We have enough developers and investors who will do that without anyone telling us, follow these guidelines.
But you
This
can
is
only
what
go,
frustrates
you can only go to that well so long.
And you know what?
You know what?
We can go to that well probably for our lifetimes and more.
You wanna bet?
Yes, yes, I do wanna bet.
I'll bet you, because 10 years ago, I went to that well to borrow $1 million to buy a aerial truck to supply every one of these people in here that you think that well's that deep, and they told me to screw off.
I'll tell you what,
So
You'll
don't
get more-
tell me where.
you'll get
where the
more,
well
you'll get
is.
more people saying no when you start doing RRC. They don't want it. The majority of the people don't want it. There may be some good to it. Majority of people don't want it.
I'm not
Why
arguing
keep
where the
pushing it?
RRC is good, bad, or different. This area needed some updating.
We don't need RRC now, regardless of what happened in
Is
the
the fire
past. We don't need it and we don't want it. I don't know how much clearer that could be.
Okay, all right.
That's because that.
So we're 8 minutes over. Oh, we've got a bunch of hands online.
Yeah, but we're gonna be respectful of people's time.
Yeah.
So maybe if people can do a really quick hit. Let's see, Allison.
Hi, I'll be quick. I just wanted to speak about the historical preservation and the lady who spoke about the homes being torn down or old cottages. A lot of times those homes are 100+ years old and are so crooked and cattywampus, it makes financially more sense to start fresh. Because they're not winterized, insulated windows, no basements, blah, blah. And then, so next thing I wanted to say is, I own a house downstate in an area called Bloomfield Village. It's an association of about 1,000 homes with a very strict guidelines for how your house, it's not only setbacks, but it's percentage of lot coverage. It's your landscaping has to be approved by the village board, your shutters, house colors, everything. It's when you buy a home in the village manager gives you a whole book with all the info and the guidelines. I could get that and share it with Bill if he would be interested, and maybe it's something that we could use to work off for historical or building aesthetic guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Allison, may I make what, this is Linda Rockwitz, I'm the note taker today.
Yes.
What, I don't know if you realize, your picture that we see is your dog doing something. And if you just wanted to make sure, I mean, it looks like it's defecated.
Oh, it was a picture of my dog walking down the boardwalk.
Okay.
I know. I called her and she stopped to look at me. Yeah, no.
Just
But I
wanted you to know that.
Okay, I will look at my picture and check on it and change it.
All right.
Thank you.
There's one more comment.
One more comment and we're gonna have to call it a night. iPad home.
Hi, you guys, JR again, this is quick. Thank you, Bob, for bringing up the idea that in reference to the 439 in the terminology framework. In my work, I urge people to communicate more effectively. And so I always ask them to ask their mate or their coworker to put that another way. Could you please put that another way? So I think that's what needs to happen. 2 recommendations are instead of framework 439, leave 439 out and just say, we have a blank template or a skeleton template with just headings. So that might help resolve some of the confusion, and it definitely crosses off one of the questions I had tonight. So thank you.
Great. Appreciate that. Thank you.
One last 2 seconds. Just because. I don't know how we could summarize some of these things that I heard earlier that I like about striking things through and then maybe incrementally making some of these changes versus this complete overhaul that's clearly confusing, divisive, and other things. I realize that we're trying to change a lot of things all at once, and there is so many different parts of the emotions here. You don't think so, but I think that a lot of people are pushing it back.
I guess I was shaking my head, which I didn't mean to do. Yeah, you got me.
Hey, Bill?
At the concept of, we're changing a lot of things at once, so.
It appears the vast majority, but the understanding of these concepts are substantial. Hence, we're also here, and that if incrementally something is summarized, implemented, or applied, that may be a step in the right direction. Take your phone.
Hey, Bill?
Yes.
That's who's speaking.
Who's speaking, please?
It's Frank Rain, Bill. Real quickly, I heard something previously during the discussion about the RRC committee. And the question had to do with who these people are. And importantly, what are they working on? That seems to be a mystery that I think you all would serve very well to clarify. Does that have any, what do you think about that idea, Bill?
I'm not the RRC guy.
Well,
The city council is in charge of it. Rachel,
Yeah,
myself, Chief Knight,
I understand it's city,
one council
staff
member.
and a council member and a citizen at large, something.
I don't know.
It's Jeff Grimm,
Oh.
Victor, Danny, Rachel Roan, Jenny Melty, Vanessa Warren, Kyle Knight, Sean Cups.
okay, so if we know who they are, what are they doing?
Okay, well, that's,
What are they working on?
Frank,
We don't.
I don't track it. I don't go to those meetings. I just don't know. So.
All of our comments, okay.
Well,
To know.
I'll say no more, other than for the sake of credibility, that seems to be a little bit of an open issue. So.
Agreed.
You think about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for great comments. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we've got some work to do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
It's cattywampus and all weird. I just restored one over the past 25 years.